You've played with B.B. King, Elton John, Billy Preston, Jerry Lee Lewis, Sheryl Crow, Roger Waters, and more recently and most consistently, Eric Clapton.
Everything I do is nonlinear. Everything I do is different. I play guitar left-handed upside down. When I was 15, I started doing drugs and drinking. I OD'd on heroin, and it took them 7 hours to revive me. I realized that I had died and come back. I remember being at Stevie Ray Vaughan's funeral, and I was having such panic attacks. I was finally like, okay, I'm interested in opium. That sounds like a good idea. It was the greatest feeling I'd ever felt. There's no more of that thing that created the panic. I did so many plant medicine ceremonies that I just hit the edge of the universe because I wanted to see it all.
So this is going to be an interesting conversation. I am, in the best way, so high right now. We're going to talk about your healing work at some point in the conversation, but for those listening, I just want to forewarn you, if I am super spaced out, you can blame it on our guest, Doyle Bramhall. We just did an incredible healing session, the ultimate breakthrough, as you call it, and it was freaking wild. So I want to start off by thanking you for that.
Of course.
Yeah, really, wow. Amazing stuff. So you have the honorable distinction, I was thinking about this morning to fact check it, and it's true, of being the guest that I've tried the longest to get on my podcast, combined with someone who's a very close friend. I think it's been, I asked Allison, she's like, I think it's been 6 years. You've been like, hey, come on my podcast. When are you doing my podcast? And, wrangling a gypsy musician to do your podcast is easier said than done. So I'm so glad we finally made this, not made it happen, but allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I just want to geek out on music for like 4 or 5 hours because anytime we've been together, we talk about life and other things. And I'm like, you'll just pepper in something really interesting to me about your experience in the music world. And I just want to dive in on every story locked in your head. But for those that are new to Doyle here, I was looking at your music resume this morning in preparation for this podcast, and I knew some of these, but just zooming out and looking at your body of work is insane. I first learned of you with the Archangels, like I think in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. There was kind of a like a resurgence of roots music and blues and things at that time, and you guys were part of that, so I was aware of you then. And then around 2001, I was working at a store called Henry Duarte on the Sunset Strip. And I remember seeing your name on invoices because we were making some custom clothes for you, I think for your album cover for that time. And I saw that today. I was like, I remember that jacket. I used to sell the shit out of that jacket. And you were one of the guys that bought it. So it's a funny kind of near miss history that we have in that way. So you've played with B.B. King, Elton John, Gregg Allman, Dr. John, Buddy Guy, Billy Preston, Willie Nelson, Leon Russell, Robbie Robertson, Jerry Lee Lewis, Erykah Badu, Sheryl Crow, Roger Waters, and more recently and most consistently, Eric Clapton. So needless to say, I could just be like, let me just take each one of those names and let's just talk about that. But the thing I want to know is, what was it like in the beginning, when you were a kid immersed in music, in the Austin scene, in the blues scene, having a musician dad? Bring me back to the early days when you first were exposed to music and thought, I want to try that, and picked up a guitar.
Yeah, it did start here, which is funny that we're doing the podcast here because it's my hometown. You live actually really close to my mother at the lake, and it's always interesting to come back because I remember Austin the way it was in the early 70s. I lived here till I was about 5 years old, and then we moved to Dallas for a year, and then out to California, in Northern California, which is our other connection.
Town.
Yeah, Santa Rosa. Yeah, we shopped at the same malls. We went. We
bought the same printed tuxedo shirt at the Coddington Mall.
Yeah, exactly. And then I probably while you were going to high school there, I was smoking next to the high school, not going to class.
To be fair, I only went to Santa Rosa High for the first 2 months. The day I turned 18, I never went back.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just remember walking out of the school and throwing all of my textbooks outside in the bushes when I was 15. And I was like, I'm done. I can't do algebra anymore. It's like, I just cannot compute what
Probably the
that
smartest
is.
thing you ever did.
Yeah.
It's funny that we both lived in or around Santa Rosa around the same time. I think you're like 2 years older than me. But I remember our mutual friend Joey Salisi, shout out to Joey, who was like friends with you in Santa Rosa, and I was friends with him in Santa Rosa. And I always wondered, like, oh, we were like ships passing in the night. It's funny that we didn't meet. There might be like a year or two, kind of differential there that prevented us from meeting, but it's funny. But anyway, back to
Yeah, I think I met him when I was like 7 or 6
so
or
you
7.
guys knew each other when you were
No,
younger.
we went to the boys club. Like we used to play whatever, like bumper pool together when we were like 7.
Funny. I met Joey because I had a New York Dolls t-shirt on, and we were probably the only 2 teenagers in that entire county that knew who the New York Dolls were or cared. So we had this very special bond because of our affinity for a certain genre.
Yeah. So bringing it back to Texas, when I was growing up, until 5 years old, I was a part of the music scene by default with my father, who played with all the different musicians. Most of the musicians had migrated from Dallas, so it was all Dallas musicians. But Dallas back in that time period was not so hip. So down here was very open-minded and liberal, and so all the hippies with long hair and playing blues and all this stuff, they could come down to Austin, and it was like all, Springs, hippies, even the country artists down here were hippies. I mean, with Willie, and everybody was super open-minded and, free thinking. And it was just music. It was all music, and everybody was exploring that. So the whole blues movement, they became the Fabulous Thunderbirds and Stevie Ray Vaughan and my dad's band, the Cobras, all these bands. That was just coming around in probably 71. And I think all the country artists and folk artists that were down here were already going strong, but it really sort of ramped up at that time. And so the club before Antone's, which became the home of the blues in Austin, was the Armadillo. That was like the big club there. And so a lot of artists like Fats Domino and a lot of the blues artists, Freddie King, which Jimmy Vaughan and would be the house band, like him and the other musicians in Austin, all the young guitar players and drummers and bands down here would back up Freddie and Muddy, and they would all come down. They would be the house band.
Wow.
So
wow.
They were probably 19 years old when they were doing this, and I was, I was 1, but they would take me to the clubs, and I would be at every show. I would be at every sound check, and, I would be like, they'd be holding me at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and I would just like hang out in the club. So I was sort of like the sort of house wolf that was like the baby wolf that would just hang out. And, when it would get too late, they would put me under the stage at the Armadillo, and I would sleep under the stage while all these bands were playing. So it was really just like being infused with all of that music. And then it sort of got out of hand, and my mom was like, okay, there's too much, sex, drugs, and blues and rock and roll going on here. And she was like, I got to raise my kids somewhere else. And so she ended up going to Dallas, and then a year later, going to California. And it was quite a contrast of culture, because down here it was all blues, like everything was gritty, raw, dirty, and barbecue, like everything. The food was dirty, the music was dirty, and we go to California, and all of a sudden it's like Renaissance fairs, operas, ballets, classical music, hikes, backpacking trips, granola, even though there was granola down here too. But it was a different, like, next level granola out in California going on. So it was quite a contrast. And then I think it was, I would spend a year in California, and then I wanted to see my dad, so I would get sent back to see my dad. And every time I moved back from California to Texas, my dad would be in a new city. So I would come down, he would be in Weatherford, Texas. The next time I would come down, he would be in Fort Worth. The next time so I had to constantly switch schools. So I think I went to 13 different schools by the age of whatever. And I think that's where I got disillusioned with school and sort of being in a type of life that other people had, because I didn't have a schedule. I was very nonlinear in my way of being in the world. So everything was free and open and completely nonlinear. So when I was in a classroom sitting at a desk and my mind drifted to like drawing spaceships and planets and aliens and all this stuff, I just wasn't there. I wasn't in the classroom, and I just could not think in linear terms. I couldn't think in a schedule or time or any of that stuff growing up. But back to the music, it became so infused in me that I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about becoming a musician until I was really 14 is when I felt like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. But before that, like, I started playing drums when I was 6 on my dad's drum kit. And I would do little things here and there and just keep practicing and playing. And I wanted to emulate my dad on drums. And then at 11, I decided to play bass because we had other drummers in the family. So I had step siblings I grew up with. I had 2 step brothers and a step sister, and then my biological sister here, Georgia. And everybody played music, and all the uncles and the entire family were all musicians, but there were a lot of drummers and keyboard players. And so I was like, all right, well, we need a bass player. So I started playing bass, and I hung out on the bass for like 3 years. And then I remember Stevie Ray Vaughan came to the house with the band into my grandmother's house. And it was like five kids there. My dad, my stepmother, and then Stevie and his band, Double Trouble, which was a 3-piece band, came to stay there. And I don't know how long they were there, maybe, 4 days or 5 days, but they were living there. And I remember, Stevie always played guitar. Like he always had it in his hand. That Cold Shot video of him like pulling out a guitar every time his wife like threw it out the window and got rid of it, and he would just pull another one out and start playing again. That was a true story.
That's funny.
And I think when I saw him playing, there was something that was just like initiated, that it was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And I just had a relationship with the actual guitar without even picking it up. I was like, oh, there's something there. And so at that point, when I was 14, I picked up the guitar, and my dad had given me a Harmony Rocket, like a 1963 Harmony Rocket. And it was played by Lightnin' Hopkins originally. And he had given it to me for my 14th birthday, but the action was really high on the guitar and the strings were heavy, and I couldn't push the strings down on the neck. So I just put it on my lap and I started playing chords, just pressing down flat on the neck. And so I sort of taught myself different songs just playing that way.
Wow.
Until I got another guitar that actually had action I could play, and then I just sort of switched it. But I learned all like chord progressions on playing it, sort of like who plays like Jeff Healey played that way, right?
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, do you ever play lap steel? You'd probably be really good at it.
No, not really, but I could play guitar. I can still play guitar like that with it in my lap.
Well, that's one of the things that makes your playing so unique is that you play a right-handed guitar, but you're left-handed, so it's upside down.
No, I actually play a left-handed guitar.
Oh, you do?
Strung right-handed, left-handed. Yeah.
So that's always been weird to me. Like, you come to my house and you play my guitar that's upside down. I'll be like, oh, I'm trying to look at what you're playing, and I can't tell because it's upside down. Like back in Laurel Canyon. But what was really interesting is you'd be playing something like, oh, that's cool. How do you do that? And then you would just put my fingers on my guitar and show me how to do it, which is upside down for you also.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Well, because
really
your
cool.
eye is trained, since you were young, your eye has been trained to see a right-handed guitar player play, so you can do the math in your head of what's going on.
Right.
But when you see me play, because everything is reversed, it's like your eye isn't trained to see that. I'm the same way. If I can transpose everything a right-handed guitar player is playing, but when somebody's playing like me, I don't know what they're doing.
Oh,
like,
wow.
I can't see what they're doing. I'm like, that's so weird.
I wonder if your unique capacity makes it harder for people to rip off your licks.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Like if someone couldn't watch a video and you'd be like, oh, I see what he's doing there.
Well, that's actually how I got the gig with Eric, is that when we got together for the first time, he wanted me to show him how to play these two songs that he was going to cover of mine on the B.B. King Eric duet record he was doing. And so I went over to his house because he asked me to come over and show him how to play the two songs. And so he's like, can you teach me how to do what you're doing? I can't figure it out. And so we were sitting across from each other, and I kept trying to show him, and I would be like, no, like with you, it's like I tried to put his fingers like, no, it's easy. It's just this. It's like, and he was looking at the guitar and he's like, just come and play the part yourself just be on the record and play the part.
Oh, sweet.
He's like, I can't figure out what you're doing. It's too confusing.
That's
to
funny.
look at.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to, you got the harmony guitar, played it on your lap, then take me from upgraded to a guitar that you could actually acclimate to.
Yeah, so I switched from sort of acoustic and semi-acoustic on my lap, and then once I brought it up, I got so deep in it, and then I got an electric guitar, which Stevie gave me this, I don't know if you remember those guitars called Tokais.
Yeah,
They're like a Japanese rip of a strap.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me that for a gift. And as soon as I got the electric guitar in my hand, I basically spent, 8 or 9 hours in my bedroom. Every bit of free time I had, I would just spend going through records, listening to records. Usually, I started out with B.B. King, Jimmy Reed, Cream were the first things. And that was the tricky part for me, is that I spent 8 hours a day listening to Eric Clapton and B.B. King. And that's, when I started soloing, it's like I just wanted to sound like B.B. and Eric. So that's why it was so surreal when I got the call from Eric out of the blue saying, I'm a huge fan of your record, your songwriting, and you as an artist, and I'm making this record with B.B. King, and I would love, for you to be a part of it. And then walking into the studio that day, and they were rehearsing my song that I had written that Eric wanted to cover. But it's funny because the influence of B.B. and Eric was in the songs they were covering.
Right.
So they come full circle.
It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it was just that was one of the most surreal moments of my life, hearing them practicing a song that I had written, which was influenced by them. And they're like, hey, Doyle, come on in. We're just rehearsing your song. And I was like, oh, okay.
It's so amazing.
He's like, put on the guitar.
Most people don't realize this, but the standards for coffee in the US are shockingly low, quite brutal actually. That means a lot of the beans on store shelves are loaded with mold, pesticides, and even mycotoxins. So if you're drinking standard coffee every day, which most people are, you're also drinking that contamination. And that, my friends, is why I love Four Sigmatic. All their coffee is third-party tested for mycotoxins, mold, pesticides, and microbial contaminants. But it gets even better. Shrooms. Four Sigmatic is the OG mushroom coffee brand, and their original mushroom coffee is boosted with lion's mane and chaga. Lion's mane, of course, supports focus, creativity, and cognition. Chaga is packed with antioxidants and supports your immune system. But it also smooths out the caffeine buzz so you don't get wrecked by that afternoon crash. And it's also got probiotics and B12 added for gut support. So Four Sigmatic's original mushroom coffee delivers the smooth, rich flavor of a medium roast with subtle notes of caramel and zero mushroomy flavor whatsoever. So you definitely want to check out foursigmatic.com/Luke to get a free bag of their best-selling mushroom coffee. All you got to do is pay shipping and handling. That's foursigmatic.com/Luke. Because here's the real. Your morning ritual sets the tone for your entire day. So why not make it clean, delicious, and functional? Hit up foursigmatic.com/Luke and grab your free bag today. All right, I got to geek out for 1 second. I promise I want to talk about other things besides music. How did B.B. King get that vibrato? Like, no other guitar player in the world has that exact vibrato. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is that in my head, or it's like you can like hear it's B.B. King in 2 seconds, 5 notes, and you're like, that's B.B. King playing. A lot of it is in that vibrato. So I watch him. He's got this big kind of fat hand, and it's like how is he making it so perfect and also so unique to his voice? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's the energy. I think it's the spirit and energy that channels through. So that was like his spirit. That's where his sweet spot was of his frequency that he was pulling through his fingers, right? It definitely wasn't a studied thing. I mean, he learned, like many other blues artists of that time period. He grew up in the Delta. He said the first time that he ever learned how to play guitar was by stringing up barbed wire from the porch deck to the awning on his front porch, and they would like hook up 4 or 5 strings, and then they would play those barbed wire strings and tune them, and then like play them a certain way to get sounds out of them. So he actually learned to play guitar on barbed wire on the porch.
So cool.
It's like
so cool.
Yeah. So cut to I think he used like 14 gauge string.
Really?
Yeah, and that was probably light compared to the barbed wire he learned on.
Right. Wow. The blues is really interesting to me. I've been a fan of blues music forever, and it's interesting because when you start to trace back the history, there's a certain point at which you just get stuck, right? There's so many divergent styles of music, and people coming from Africa, European styled instruments and chord progressions and things all kind of converging in a really interesting way. And I love listening to the really early primitive kind of blues that's just like that. They're like, is that even a real guitar? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like that there was like a set of rules to music, right? To secular music. And then a group of people took those rules and some of those instruments and was like, that's nice. We're going this way, and did something that, like literally changed the world culturally, at least,
Yeah.
Like blues is it's a music I can never get tired of.
Yeah, I think because it's so deeply rooted. It's so earthy, it's so real, it's like it's all emotion. And it's also, if we're speaking in the spiritual sense, it is all root chakra, right? And so you're feeling that thing that just like, it moves you in a way because it's so primal, it's so rootsy.
Primal, that's the word I was looking for, yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, a lot of the people that came over from parts of Africa, I kept going back and back because I wanted to, as a historian, I wanted to learn more and more and more about, okay, well, where did that come from? Because it had to come from somewhere. So I just kept going, deeper in the Delta until the beginning of that first person that played on a porch that somebody drove by and went, what's that? They had gotten a hold of an acoustic guitar from a country guy, and they were like playing this other kind of stuff on it. But those, the original the original people where that came from is in Mali, in Africa. That's where they traced back where the ships came over and where those people first came from. So you have those rhythms, and you have, that way of singing and that rhythmic thing going on, but now you're using like a country acoustic guitar to express that. And so it turned into this whole thing of that being the root of that, where that music is coming from, but then it's a new expression because it's a new instrument, it's a new beat, and then they're pulling from all this, spiritual music and church music. And then they decided to go secular with it, just for their own party's sake, because it's like, okay, let's let our hair down and let's, let it all hang out. So that became sort of their way of like, purging out all the things at that time that were going on, with, humanity. Mm-hmm. So that was a way they could just like be free, and get their time and then express in this music. And that's why it's so, you just feel it. I mean, I do. I think if somebody doesn't feel that music, then I don't know where they're from. Like, I don't know like what they're doing.
They might be a reptilian. Well, it's funny because when I was like really, probably I guess early 90s is when I really became a blues head. And sometimes people would say to me like, why do you listen to that sad music? It's so sad and depressing. And I could never understand them. Like, are you kidding me? Like the saddest John Lee Hooker song of all time is like just pure beauty to me. It doesn't sound sad. It doesn't make me feel sad. Yeah. It just makes me I feel depth in it, but I've never taken it to be sad as some people do. I mean, even You Got the Blues, right? It's like, oh, you're really down. But I think because of the honesty of that expression and just as you said, a way to move the kind of energy that was among those early people and the suffering involved, it's like, even though it was born out of a lot of pain in many cases, for some reason, when it hits this realm, it lands on me as like a celebration of beauty and
if you listen
truth,
if you listen to the old guys talking about that, like the originators of that music, they were questioned about that exact thing, and they said, no, it's not. We're not playing it to be sad or to give you the blues or to give you depression or any of that. This was a way to, have relief from the suffering that it came from, but it was actually to like really like be free and to feel things and to celebrate through that music. Like if you watch any of these old clips of like, Howlin' Wolf or Son House, it's like they're grooving, and
yeah, totally.
Like all of them, they're just grooving. Hound Dog Taylor, it's like they are just partying. So it's not that, because it came from the Delta, it came from those hard times, it was an expression of beauty. It was an expression of their entire culture and who they were as a people. It was that expression of like the most beautiful, majestic spirit coming through the music.
When you were young and you got that electric guitar and started woodshedding, I think this is like, we have so many things in common. There's one that we don't, I think, and you'll answer this, but you didn't go through like the heavy metal and punk rock phase. Like, I think I've asked you if you like Black Sabbath and you're like, what? No, gross. I'm like, what? How could, even now, I'm not sitting around listening to Judas Priest or Metallica or something, but like Black Sabbath.
You're listening to Queens of the Stone Age.
I don't like them. One song, the one hit song they had, I forgot what it was. No One Knows, I think. That was a good song.
Yeah. I actually like them.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I like Josh.
I mean,
they're super cool.
They have a unique thing going on. I'll give them that. But did you ever, did you go through like the trends of music in the, in the early 80s, or did you just, because you were so immersed in this kind of rootsy music that you just stayed in that lane?
When I was in 5th grade, I was 11, I think. Is that right? 11?
I don't know.
5th grade? Unless I was held.
I have no idea.
Unless I was held back so
It's
much
all a
that it's
blur.
like.
It sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, 12, 6th grade, 13, 7. Yeah, yeah.
So I was in a history class, and I was so checked out of school, like every class, except art. I really loved art. I liked English, and PE was one of my favorites. Any way to just run and play football or whatever. But I had this one history class at 11 years old, and I remember the history teacher said, today we're going to, study about American music, blues music, and we're going to play a film. And it was The World According to Lightning Hopkins. And that guy, I can't remember, Les something, I can't remember his name. He made a bunch of films like on Clifton Chenier in Louisiana and Lightning Hopkins and other artists, and they were brilliant films. And so he turns it on. I'm 11 years old. And I remember when he turned it on, I was like, I still get chills right now thinking about it, because I was like full-bodied chills just looking at Lightning Hopkins and just watching every little thing that was in this movie, all the playing, just the relationships, the relationship to earth and people and the connectedness of, that community. And I was just glued to this projector, film. And I remember everybody about halfway through the movie was asleep, like everyone. And I was the only one awake, and I was looking around at these people like, are you guys crazy? You know the gold we're getting right here? Like, this is incredible. And so that was like one moment where it was like this awakening thing. And then that was it for school. I was like, that was the one cool thing that happened to me at school. At that time period, people were listening to Duran Duran and Oingo Boingo and
Men at Work.
Well, I sort of liked Men at Work. They were cool.
I have, how songs give you just associations that you can't get rid of. You know what I mean? Those, like, you just hear a certain song. A lot of those kind of early 80s pop new wave hit songs, they give me the creepiest feeling inside, because they would be on my clock radio that would wake me up really early to go to school, and I dreaded school. School was like checking into prison every day. Yeah, so I hear some of those songs, Don't you want me, baby? There's like certain songs from that era. I'm just like, turn it off. Totally creeps me out.
Yeah, so I had no connection to pop music at all. It sounded very lightweight, and it just didn't do anything to me. I would listen to it. There were some things that came through that I liked, like Shock the Monkey by Peter Gabriel. Like when that came out, I was like, oh, that has something else going on.
That's one of the ones that creeps me out.
But because I am a monkey, in Chinese zodiac, I am a monkey. Yeah. So when Shock the Monkey came out, they're singing for me.
But you didn't get caught up in like metal and punk rock and things like that.
No, metal was tough for me. Even though I was in a heavy metal band, one of my first bands when I was 15. Oh. And it was called Public Enemy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the funny thing
was,
copywritten
that shit. Should have copy.
No, it was when I was 14.
Oh.
And I think it was before Public Enemy came out But I remember at that time period, I went through a lot of phases in my childhood because I was trying to fit in somehow. And so at that time, when I was 14, I was very into like country clubs, and I was very preppy. Like I dressed with penny loafers and topsiders, and I had my Ralph Lauren shirts and the sweater and all that stuff. And I would play golf and tennis and do the whole country club, preppy thing.
Wow.
And so when I got hired to be in the metal band, my first band, I still dressed like a preppy, but everybody else had the long hair and wore the spandex and all that stuff. But I was sitting there with like a plaid, like Ralph Lauren shirt on and penny loafers and short hair. And then I would just play blues licks over whatever metal they were doing. And I was just like, here's some Albert King, And And then I switched really hard over to punk rock, the scene of punk rock, because in San Francisco in the 80s, that's when it was, really fired up. It was a little before that in LA, I think, that punk rock scene. But then it got really, the punk rock scene in San Francisco was a pretty big movement. And so I just, that was the culture that I really felt most connected to. So all my friends were punk rockers. The bands I hung out with were all punk bands, and I went to see everything, all the punk rock bands. And I think it really spoke to me as a spirit because I loved what it represented, just, being totally free, no establishment, like fingers blazing. And, I would hang out in the mosh pits and just sit there and like lotus while, with my friend, and everybody would be like circling and, moshing and doing stage dives. And I would just sit in total peace, like watching, different bands, Suicidal Tendencies or
so
GBH.
It was the energy, the energy of the scene and of the music. I just thought of something.
And there was some good drugs too.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just thought of something though, like looking at heavy metal and punk rock, say like in the early 80s. I mean, punk rock is much closer generally to just classic rock and roll, right? I mean, you think about the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, Iggy Pop. I mean, some of the early kind of predecessors of punk rock were playing like 1-4-5, like basically R&B chord structures, super fast with a lot of attitude, versus metal gets into like the classical kind of scales and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's much more dirgy and dark and doesn't adhere as closely to like going back to the roots of blues. I mean, I hear like the Ramones to me are basically like an R&B band just turned on 78.
I mean, you can if you did some of the Ramones songs like a 50s band, like a 50s sort of barbershop band, there would probably be
totally,
some link to the 50s songs.
Totally.
I did love Fishbone though. They were one of my favorite.
Oh yeah.
They were one of my favorite groups.
We hung out with one of your buddies,
Chris Dowd.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah. Okay, so going back to, and then there's so many more things I want to get into, so I'm trying to keep myself from going, off the rails here. But I am just curious about your musical history and thoughts on music in general. Do you remember the first time you got feedback from people, say kids you were playing with or whatever, that you had something special? When did it kind of occur to you when you were like, oh shit, I think I'm pretty good at this? So obviously you were woodshedding and practicing and stuff, but you have an immense amount of just God-given talent that at least...
No, I think I had enough of that on my own. I think I knew that.
You knew you had a gift?
Yeah. Like I thought I was really badass. I was like, I'm into some cool stuff here. Like I know what I'm doing here. Even though looking back, it's like if I listened to anything that I did when I was 15 or 16, I had to turn it off. It's like, because I didn't really know anything, but I thought I did. And I think that's what that kind of, that energy that I had, that I just thought of myself that highly as a musician, even though I didn't really, like, I was playing in 4 or 5 different bands after a year of, like, I started, and then a year later I was in 5 bands playing, like switching off. So I just felt like I thought I could do things, and I knew I could do things. And so, it's like that fake it till you make it thing. Like I just had it.
Yeah. It's like your competence gave you confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at 18, you start playing with the fabulous Thunderbirds with Jimmy Vaughn, right?
Yeah, when I was 17, I flew down to Jimmy Vaughn's house and stayed with him for, I think, 3 weeks before our first tour with the fabulous Thunderbirds. So I went from being in all these local bands in Santa Rosa and touring Northern California to getting hired in the Thunderbirds. And that came by way of Stevie, because I had been sitting in with Stevie at different shows and hanging out with him. And so when Jimmy Vaughn had recorded a record called Powerful Stuff, And it was the first record where he had done guitar overdubs, so there were a lot of two-part guitars. And so they wanted to go out and represent that record with all the parts on it. And so as he was looking for guitar players, he was talking to Stevie, and Stevie said, you should hire Doyle to play. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, he's really good. Like, I think he can do that, and be the second guitar player. And then Jimmy had later said that he hired me because of the way I dressed. He said I wore some kind of like zoot suit.
You had a cool look.
Yeah, I wore a zoot suit and had my hair slicked back at the time when I sat in with him. He's like, yeah, I like the way he dresses. I think I'll hire him.
I mean, he and Stevie are kind of style icons,
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy's got his thing,
Mm-hmm.
He's got his like 50s Western skewed suit situation going on.
My favorite was, I think it was the Pat Sajak show. Remember when that was on?
Mm-mm.
You remember Sajak?
I remember the name, but I can't picture the show.
Okay.
He was
Anyway.
like a talk show host kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then he had his own show, so we went on to play on that. And I remember Jimmy walked out he had his Thunderbirds suit on, like all black suit with Thunderbirds on the side, the pants. But he had these cowboy boots with taps on them, and also what are the things on the back?
Spurs.
Yeah, so spurs and taps, so you could hear him walking when he came down the hallway. But he wore a holster with guns in it for that performance, on that performance we did.
No shit.
Yeah.
What a gangster. That's hilarious. Wow. Real guns too. Not like
Yeah.
plastic.
So yeah, so I did, I guess maybe 2 years, my first show with the Thunderbirds. So I practiced with him for 3 weeks, rehearsed everything. Then we went on tour. We started in Hawaii. I think we had a few shows in Hawaii, and then we went to Australia, and I think we were there for like 6 weeks or something with my first tour at 18 years old. And then we just toured nonstop for 2.5 years. And then when we got off the road, Jimmy left the Thunderbirds, and so I bailed at that time because I only wanted to be in the band if he was in it. So then I left and started my own solo career. And I was in Austin that was like the turning point. So I signed a deal with Geffen. It was like, I don't know how many albums, but I started working on my solo album. But I was trying to find the right musicians, write all the songs for it. And then about 6 months into it, we played a show because Charlie Sexton, myself, and Double Trouble, Stevie Ray Vaughan's band, after he passed away, we were all rehearsing in the Archangels. The Arc was the Austin Rehearsal Complex. And we were all in different rehearsal rooms. And so as I was exploring my first solo album, we decided to get together for an event that was happening in Austin. So we played the show, and there were record labels out in the audience at that show. And then it was like everybody wanted to sign us as that unit, Charlie, me, Chris, and Tommy.
Oh, interesting.
And so they were just like all coming at us like, we want to sign you, I want to sign you. And so that's how the Archangels came about.
Oh, I didn't realize you were already making a path solo career before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm going to make my solo album. But it was the same company, Geffen, that was sort of the highest bidder for us as a band. And they said, we'll still make your solo album, but will you do this first?
We all know the modern industrial food system is unethical and toxic. Even well-raised meat gets polluted by how it's processed after the animal is harvested. So the question becomes, how do you feed your family food that's actually clean and sustainable? Enter Real Provisions from Sacred Hunter Monsal Denton. Their wild axis deer and organ jerky bites are pure, savory, and loaded with nutrients you just can't get from farm-raised meat. Their wild venison has 8 times more omega fatty acids than grass-fed beef and higher vitamins from the animal's biodiverse diet. Plus, when you eat real provisions, you're also helping fix a real ecological problem. These imported axis deer have no predators in Hawaii, so populations have exploded. This means the land is overgrazed and the animals end up starving while the ecosystem collapses. Responsibly managing the population reduces suffering, relieves pressure on the land, and helps the remaining animals thrive. I know I say this a lot, but you guys gotta try this stuff, and here's how you do it. realprovisions.com/Luke and enter the code Luke to get a free bag of venison chips with your order. If you want to eat with integrity, Real Provisions wild axis deer and organ jerky bites are the way to do it. They're good for animals, people, and the environment, and here's what's up. They taste delicious too. I am obsessed with this stuff. Try it for yourself and find out at realprovisions.com/Luke. At what point did drugs and alcohol start to become a meaningful part of your life and, career, so to speak?
Pervasive? I started when I was 15, like the beginning of my 15th year. I started doing drugs and drinking, and I was all in. I mean, I went straight to the hard stuff at that time, and I did that for 2 years, and then I got sober in the 12-step program. I got sober at 17. And then I stayed sober from 17 till 21, I think. And then I started doing even harder drugs. So I had 2 years in sobriety.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Mm.
What do you think led to the relapse?
Well, I know what led to it is the beginning of it was I started having panic attacks that were so intense that I would walk outside at night to go somewhere, and I would look up at the sky, and the sky and the stars and the moon and everything would start melting. It was almost like an LSD type thing that would occur. So every time I walked outside, everything would start melting, and I would have to run back inside the house because I didn't know what that was. But that's how intense panic attacks can get, that it can just really warp the way that your mind works and the way that you see things. So those panic attacks kept getting more intense and more intense. And then Stevie died in a helicopter accident. And that just sort of sent me into a whole other dimension with panic attacks, anxiety, being scared of existence, of living, because one of the reasons I got sober was because him and my dad had gotten sober, and I remember Stevie calling me and offering to help me get sober, and he was my mentor and like an older brother to me, and I just I loved him as a spirit so much, and he meant so much to me. So when he died so suddenly, especially from that helicopter going down, I just couldn't function in reality anymore. And so the panic attacks getting more intense and more intense. And I just stayed in my house, and I spent like 3 or 4 months in my house, in my apartment. And it got to the point, the panic attacks got so intense that I remember that I couldn't go outside. At first it was like I couldn't go outside, and then it went to another level of, okay, I can't go outside anymore. And then it got to the point to where if I stood up from a chair above a certain line, like if I stood above 4 feet in the air, things would start to melt. And so I would have to stay below this sort of imaginary line of like, okay, that's the melting point where everything collapses on me. And so then I just basically would crawl around my house to go make food in the kitchen, and then crawl back to the bed and crawl back to the chair. I couldn't go above that line
Holy shit, dude.
Everything would melt. It would I would go into full panic, heart attack, sky melting, ceiling melting.
That doesn't sound like a very fun way to be sober.
No, it wasn't. So I remember I was at a friend's house. Apparently I was able to go to a friend's house during that time. And he was talking, and he said something about Percodan, and he was explaining it because he had surgery on his, like root canals and surgeries and all this stuff. And he said, I have a whole bottle of Percodan. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he said, well, if you do 5 of those Percodan, it's like doing a hit of heroin. And so I was interested because I was also scared of doing that. But I was like, anything to take this panic away, because I'd been going to hospitals and emergency rooms because I thought I was dying every night for like 30 days in a row. So I would keep going back emergency room, and they're like, you're fine, you're fine. I'm like, nope, my heart's giving out. I'm dying. So then I remember being at Stevie Ray Vaughan's funeral, and I was having such panic attacks, and I was hooked up to one of those Holter monitors. So they were checking my heart out, and I was all hooked up to these different things to monitor my heart rate and any irregular heartbeats or murmurs or any of that stuff. So that's how intense the panic attacks got. So I was finally like, okay, I'm interested in Percodan. I'm interested in an opiate, whatever that is. I've never tried it, so that sounds like a good idea. So I took the bottle, and I ended up driving from Dallas to Austin, and I took, I think 3 of the Percodan as I was driving down. And, an hour later, it like all came on, and it was the greatest feeling I'd ever felt. I was like, oh, wow, I have no problems. Like, there's no more of that thing that created the panic disorder or any of that stuff. I just find that it freed me from that feeling. So I get back to Austin. A week later, I run out of the Percodan. And I was like, okay, well, I definitely need to be on opiates and on that medication. So if I've already basically done heroin by taking these 5 Percodan, I might as well do the heroin, because it's the same thing. So I went to meet someone who I knew sold heroin. And I remember even, the dealer knew my father, knew me, was in the circle. And I remember going to find him, and I said, hey, I'm interested in buying some heroin. And he said, what are you talking about? He's like, you and your dad are sober. And I said, yeah, I know, but I still want to buy some heroin. And he goes, I'm not going to be a part of that, because, I'm friends with your family, and I don't want to be a part of that whole thing. And I said, look, either you give me some heroin or sell me some heroin, or I'm going to go on the east side and I'm going to try and find it. And I said, and I know it's pretty dodgy over there, and I'd rather know where I'm getting it from. And so I talked him into selling me heroin that way. And then it was on for 2.5 years later. Every day I was on heroin, and then started adding cocaine to that heroin. And then started adding everything else on top of that. So 2.5 years of speedballing and alcohol and all that stuff.
Where were you living at this time?
Santa Rosa.
Oh, really?
Well, I was here in Texas for a while, but then there was a whole scene where the feds were casing my garage apartment, which I was hosting the biggest drug, heroin and cocaine dealer in Austin at that time, who was this like Sri Lankan drug dealer. And so if I let them use my house for them to run drugs through, then they would just give me the free drugs. So I thought it was a pretty good deal. But my dad had he had told me that the feds were casing my place because he had been coming by because he was worried about me, and he saw Fed cars that had been casing the place for like 6 weeks outside my apartment. So anyway, I remember everybody left, all the sort of dealers and the runners in my house, and I was the only one in the house, and he broke in the door and took me and basically forced me into a car, got me on a plane, and flew me out to California to stay with my mom. And the very next day that I was taken from that by my father, they busted the house and sent everybody away for like 5 years in prison.
Wow.
So he was on it. He had a hunch that something was about to go down. He just broke in and took me out to California. So then there was a whole other life in California on that until basically I OD'd on heroin one night, and it took them 7 hours to revive me. And before that moment, I never thought I could die doing heroin or cocaine. I actually thought I was invincible. So as soon as that happened and I realized that I had died and come back, I was so scared. I was like, oh, wow, I can die. Because I just thought I could do infinite, amounts of everything and be cool. So once I died and came back, I was like, okay, well, if I go back into using again, it's not going to get better than that. Like there's only one place I can go with it, and I know I will go there.
So your dad was still, so he and Stevie had gotten sober, you'd gotten sober, Stevie dies, you relapse and start descending, your dad stays sober?
Yeah, he was sober at that time.
How long after Stevie died did your dad pass?
Stevie died in 90, maybe, I think 90, and then my dad died in 2011.
Oh, so it was a long time after that.
My dad and Stevie got sober in the late, like 87, maybe.
Early adopters.
Yeah.
Pioneers.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember one of the fears I had around getting sober, because I was living in Hollywood and playing in bands and all that stuff, and like being sober felt uncool to me, right? And I was like, I want to be a musician, playing bands, like being sober is lame. Which is so funny when you're like a total loser addict, you're like thinking the people that have their shit together and are living happy, productive lives are the losers. It's a funny perspective, but I remember being really inspired by Stevie, who was there was another very public artist that got sober around that time. Eric, I think it was Eric. Yeah. And I was like, that doesn't get much cooler than that. It was inspiring. And then, when I did get sober, I ended up working for Aerosmith, and they were like the first like rock stars to come out, you know?
Yeah.
That were like a rock star band.
Yeah, they were into it too.
Yeah. And like talking about it everywhere in the media and like saying how cool it was. And it actually really helped me to have touch points like that, just icons of what is possible, that your gifts or your opportunity to make a creative career for yourself aren't dependent on doing drugs. So I really appreciated when people started to come out publicly like that,
That's a good point. Also, because I wanted to emulate my father and Stevie so much when I was growing up, that when they got sober, it's like I wanted to emulate that too. It's like, oh, wow. There must be something in that. And I think that, Stevie was into a lot of, he was into the 12 steps and the Big Book and Bill Wilson and all that. But he was also into the Course of Miracles as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was he was really big on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
One artist that we both share in common is Sly Stone. Rest in peace. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, oh, what music do Doyle and I both like? I mean, there's so much of it, right? But I know you're like a super hardcore Sly Stone fan, as I am. And I was thinking about, the Desert Island collection thing. Mm-hmm. I think Fresh would be in my top 2 to 5. Like, you can never listen to any music the rest of your life except a couple albums. I really think that would be one. Anytime I go back and listen to it, I just go like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is so, it's so perfect. It's so brilliant. It's like really just one of the best documented pieces of music of all time to me.
Yeah, he really captured that era, like what was going on and the sort of zeitgeist and all of it, you know?
Yeah.
He was, for me, I mean, every Sly record, like even the first one, A Whole New Thing, like that has songs on it that is so deep. And that's when he was just beginning, you know, he was a DJ in San Francisco or Oakland. You know, he was coming out of just being a DJ, but then he was also very schooled. So he knew composition, he knew songwriting, composition, like, you know, arranging, all that stuff. And I think that's what I loved about Sly is he had all the funk and all the soul and all the beauty and the poetic lyrics, you know, to go with it. But even just listening to Family Affair, you know, off Riot, I mean, it's just a masterpiece. I mean, he has so many masterpieces.
That album is rad because it's like the introduction of home recordings. You know, there's the drum machines and everything's very kind of dry and sparse, and there's not tons of layering of tracks. It's like pretty roomy.
Yeah.
But it sounds home recorded.
Yeah.
Like I used to have it on cassette. I was like, this is so lo-fi before lo-fi was a thing, right?
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other ones that have so much orchestration and horns and there's so much going on and like a live room feel.
Yeah.
Like a big, that one is like so compressed. It just lands in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on with Sly because he was so innovative in so many different ways with, you know, sonically innovative, song structure, new forms of music, new forms of soul, new forms of rock and roll. I mean, he was just like in this whole alchemy of like slyness, which encompassed everything, every type of music, and it was all in there. But he would do like really innovative stuff, like just anything that popped into his head, and he didn't know if it would work or not, but he just like got a hit. It's like, oh, let's do it this way. So like, for instance, on Family Affair, if you listen to his voice, it's a different voice that he's singing with on that track, different than other tracks that he sang. And he wanted that like morning voice.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why it's really low sounding. Like he sounds like a sort of hoarse baritone on that. And so
checking each other out.
yeah. Checking each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the story on that was that he got the idea that he wanted to record right when he woke up, like the first thing he said when he woke up. So he had the engineer, basically he had a mic and he had the engineer stay up as long as he could, but he said, as soon as I say record, I'm going to wake up in the morning. So he went to sleep. He said, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I want you to hit record as soon as I say record.
Wow.
And so, you know, he got 9-10 hours sleep, whatever it was. And then he woke up in the morning. It was like, all right, record. And so he pressed record. The engineer was waiting all night to do that. And they played the song down. And so that was just his track of just waking up.
That's so funny because you think about all the singers that do all these vocal warm-ups and stuff. You know, it's like, dude's so talented. It's like he's doing the opposite of that. It's like, how cold can my voice be when I go record a #1 hit? You know?
Yeah.
That's so funny, dude.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There was
also Billy Preston was on that as well. So it was him and Billy Preston playing the two keyboard parts on that.
Right. One of my favorite songs of all time is Billy Preston's cover of Blackbird. You ever heard that? The Beatles' Blackbird?
Yeah.
Insane. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about getting sober, what that looked like. And then I really want to talk about recovery, being a musician in recovery, traveling, how you were able to navigate that in a world that, I'm sure maybe less so now in some cases because many people have gotten sober, and sobriety and rehabs is kind of a known and popular thing in the entertainment industry more so than then. But when you really started getting to that, breaking point, the do or die phase, what did that second sobriety entail? And where did that start to lead you in terms of your spiritual path and career?
So during the time that I was doing speedballs, which is heroin and cocaine, not speed, I didn't pick up a guitar or play music or even think about music in that 2.5 years. I had no interest for anything other than getting the drugs and putting them in me.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
So, I would be asked to play music, and the only time I would play music is like if I totally ran out of money or, didn't have a way to steal anything. I would go play a gig, and it'd be like, whoa, like I have a lot of money here for my drugs. Like it's a good idea, but I really didn't want to be outside because I also didn't look like I look now. I got down to probably 145 pounds maybe. And like I was so skinny, and I mean the bones were like sticking out in my face. So I didn't really want to be seen. When I went through that 2.5 period with zero music in my life, zero anything other than drugs, that when I OD'd and came back to life, that's when I put myself on a protocol. Because I'd been to many treatment centers. I'd just gone in and out of many treatment centers during that time period. But I only lasted like, 2 or 3 days until I just couldn't take, I couldn't take it anymore. It was like 2 or 3 days and I was out. I would break out of the treatment centers, even if they were like locked. I would figure out a way to get out.
God. One of the things that kept me sober in the early days was knowing how much it sucks to be in rehab for 28 days. Like how fucking brutal that was on so many levels. I was like, I'm never going to relapse because I know if I don't die or end up in jail, I'm going to end up in another rehab, and that I can't allow that. It's just torture. Mine was in Santa Rosa. No, Sebastopol.
Oh, really?
Azure Acres. And I
remember that place.
And I went in coming off heroin.
Yeah.
And so I'm insomniac, right? And can't sleep. Cold as shit. I'm 135 pounds.
Heebie-jeebies.
I check into that rehab and it's all tweakers. It's like all construction workers whose insurance paid for them. It was all tweakers. So all they could do is sleep, and they're always hot. I was like totally out of sync, which made it torturous. So I can't sleep for days and days. I'm freezing my ass off. It was in February in Sebastopol. And it was just, I'm grateful obviously for it saving my life, but that was really motivating to me. I'm like, I'm never doing that shit again. Yeah. So I can't imagine being in a few.
Yeah. So when I went through that thing, I OD'd, then I went to jail the same night that I OD'd.
Oh, fun.
And I spent a couple of days in jail.
In Santa Rosa?
Yeah. And
what'd you go to jail for?
Well, they got me for public intoxication.
Oh.
But they said they were getting me because I had drugs on me, but I didn't have any drugs because I did all the drugs.
Right.
I had nothing on me.
Right.
But yeah, they sort of roughed me up, did this whole thing, and then took me to jail, and then they fire hosed me in the jail and stripped me and put me in the cell with the holding tank with all the other people in jail, and then they would just fire hose me and leave me in the middle of the room.
Are you
just
serious?
Yeah.
I know where that jail is. It's right off the 101 on the way to Windsor.
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. I mean, the funny thing
shit.
is I thought Texas, it would be more hardcore on that level. Yeah. But it was actually Santa Rosa, which was a bit more hicky.
Right.
With, that scene.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in there for a couple of days, and I had this sort of, moment where, the universe was looking out for me. Because when I was getting roughed up in jail and going through all that stuff, I walked out I was let out of that holding tank, and they were going to switch me and so this guy who was a sheriff that had walked in, he said, he opened the door, let me out, and we were walking to get some clothes. He said, "Hey, I have some clothes for you. We're going to go in this other room so you can put the clothes on." And he said, I think he was my best friend's uncle, and he had recognized my name. And he said, I heard about what they did with you. And he said that it wasn't cool what they did. And he said, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you out the back door. But when I let you out the back door, just, take off and don't look back.
Holy shit. He broke you out?
Yeah, it was like my childhood best friend's uncle who had recognized me, my name.
Yeah.
Even though he probably didn't recognize my face because of the way I looked. But anyway, he said, I saw what they did to you, and it wasn't cool, and I'm going to let you out of here, but don't say a word about this. So he let me out, and then I got, some court document at my home address where I had to go to court for, some certain things around that.
Did they charge you with like breaking out? Because you couldn't tell that you were let out?
No, because they didn't have anything on me, because they were saying that I had drugs on me, but I didn't have anything on me.
Right.
So they got me.
No true junkie ever carries around drugs because you did it all.
Yeah.
The only way you get caught with drugs is on your way back from scoring. But most people, like in LA, we used to score on 6th and Bonnie Bray, that area down by MacArthur Park. That was really the only place, one of the few places you could buy heroin on the street. Because no one sold it in Hollywood. They only sold crack.
Yeah.
And the junkies that I hung around would score and then like pull over right there and use.
Yeah.
And often get arrested,
Right.
So I never did that because I didn't want to interrupt my high, It's like I would just sweat it out till I got back to Hollywood, and then I would use, just drive home with the balloons in my mouth so in case I got pulled over I could swallow them, But I used to always think like, God, you idiots, 20 more minutes and you're home free. You know what I mean? It's like, don't pull over right next to the dope spot and use, you fucking idiot. A lot of people used to do that.
So when I went through that whole thing, went through the court thing. I ended up, getting off and not having to go back to jail. But in court, I was told that I have to do weekly counseling every day, weekly counseling at the methadone clinic. That was like for 6 months, I think. I had to go every day, every weekday to the methadone clinic and have counseling. So I would get my methadone, and then I would go into the counselor's office, and we'd have an hour of discussion, and then I could leave. And so I did that. And then the scene in Santa Rosa at the time was getting more intense, because at that point I was like, okay, I'm stopping heroin and I'm stopping cocaine, but I was still on methadone and I was still on a lot of alcohol. And I was on Klonopin, Valium, and Librium, all three of those at the same time. And so when I would drink so much that I would go into blackouts. And there was one, month where I blacked out 30 nights in a row, but I was blacking out from like a sip of beer because my liver just couldn't process, or kidneys couldn't process any more alcohol in my blood. So I would drink like a couple of sips and then I would just black out. So anyway, I moved back to Texas, got out of Santa Rosa, and then I started to write songs again, not being on heroin. So all these songs started, pouring out of me. And I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a year and I'm going to put myself on my own protocol. And my protocol was to wean myself off of methadone. I was going to keep drinking as hard as I could drink, because I thought I'll drink for a year, just myself into oblivion. So when I wake up from that, after I wean myself off of all the other drugs, I don't really like drinking. I'm just doing it because I don't want to think about heroin anymore. So I would, wouldn't be seduced anymore by heroin and cocaine. And so I did. I drank myself into oblivion and caused a lot of havoc in my life. But I also was weaning every day. I would like be very meticulous about like, okay, 5 milligrams less of this, 5 milligrams less of this. And I did it. And then to the year, I weaned it off of everything. And I remember waking up after being in a blackout, and I was off all the drugs finally one day. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and my liver and kidneys were so taxed that it was like, I had just like these red splotches that were all over my body because I wasn't processing the alcohol, like I wasn't filtering it out anymore. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm done. And I just stopped. And then like maybe a week later, I moved to California and picked back up where my record deal had left off, because I still had a record deal with Geffen after the Archangels.
Are they like just waiting on, hello, you owe us 3 albums?
Yeah. But during that time period of that year, I had been demoing and writing songs, and I think I had like 30 songs that I had written and pitched to the record company, and they really loved the songs. But I just wasn't quite ready because I wasn't sober yet. So I stopped alcohol, all the drugs, and I moved to California. And within a month and a half, I was making my first album in LA.
Holy shit.
With Wendy and Lisa.
Wow.
From Prince's band, The Revolution.
Wow.
And so then that started that life. So I was able to stay, at that point, I had no interest in doing drugs and alcohol ever again. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to meetings at that time. But I did start going to meetings here and there, and then I got a sponsor, and I sort of eased into the 12-step program again.
That's the craziest rehab program.
Yeah.
Wean off methadone 1 day at a time for a full year, drink like crazy. You didn't have the DTs or anything when you stopped the alcohol?
No, I mean, I was getting so sick from the alcohol that it was like the next day I just felt like, oh, I'm finally free, and it's like my body started clearing up.
I can't be certain, but I'm pretty damn sure our ancestors didn't suffer from food comas. Somewhere along the way, something happened to our guts, folks. We started accepting bloating and that post-meal crash as normal, as if feeling heavy or foggy after eating a meal is just the cost of being human. But it's not. That's your gut crying for help. Well, thankfully, I found the answer. The Gut Essentials bundle from Just Thrive Health. This combo pairs 2 gut superstars, Just Thrive Probiotic and Digestive Bitters, for a profound synergistic effect. Now, first off, Just Thrive Probiotic is the only probiotic clinically proven to arrive 100% alive in your gut for a difference you'll actually feel. So we're talking about less bloat, less energy, and even clearer skin. Then we've got the Digestive Bitters. So instead of forcing appetite control the way GLP-1 drugs do, these bitters work with your biology the way we evolved to eat. See, here's what's up. Bitters used to be a normal part of the human diet, but modern foods strip that signal out. Well, these bitters bring it back in a way your body remembers and respects. So I'm inviting you to take the Just Thrive Feel Better Challenge today and save 20% off your first Gut Essentials bundle when you visit justthrivehealth.com/Luke and use the code Luke at checkout. See the difference for yourself, or these guys are going to give you a full refund, no questions asked. Again, that happy gut is just a click away. That's justthrivehealth.com/Luke, and the code is Luke. Was there, during that period, or when you went back to LA and started working on music again, when or if prayer, divine intervention, that come into play? Because I know for me, there's a moment where I think I uttered I uttered my very first sincere prayer to God, even though I didn't believe in God at all. There was no other choice, and I did it and was struck sober, and it'll be 29 years in a couple days. So it's like, I couldn't deny that God was the common denominator in that, right? Because I could never do it myself. All of a sudden I say this little prayer and poof, like magic, you're just sober, never ever thought about using ever since. It's just crazy. Did you have any kind of epiphanies or visitations or signs, or were you working on this from a spiritual angle at all?
Not really. When I started getting back into AA or, the 12-step program, I was doing it because I thought it was the thing I should do, being a recovering alcoholic. So I would go to meetings, but I would sit in the back. And if I knew that they were calling on people around the room, I would duck down below somebody
Totally.
so I wouldn't get called on. And then I would like peek back up after, okay, well, that's time. And I'd be like, okay, cool. I can sit up now and be free. But I really half-assed it. Like I was just there, just putting myself there because I thought it was the right thing to do, or I thought people would think it was the right thing to do. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're a recovering alcoholic. You need to be in meetings. I was like, okay, that's what I have to do. But it wasn't until 2010 where I went through this whole shift, like Advaita, non-duality shift, where I became one with everything. I could see that I was one with every, energetic thing in the world. So I started connecting in that way. And then I really went deep into the 12-step program. I got a sponsor, went to my home group, and, I was in bliss, when I started doing that. But I actually hit on the whole spiritual awakening thing into non-duality just before I started. I went into AA to practice that as the spiritual program. But I had come into it before that, just before that.
Did that happen in a spontaneous way, or did you get the clue that, I should probably start leaning into spirituality?
No, I think it was like, I was in a marriage and had 2 daughters in that marriage, and we ended up splitting and getting a divorce at the time. And so it was a very taxing and challenging process to go through not being with my children and not being there every day and every morning with my daughters to be a part of their life, because I had to be out of the house. I had to live somewhere else. And it was very difficult for me because I'm so connected with my children. I was getting very anxious, very fearful, and all that stuff through the divorce process, and even just being away from my children. And I think I just sort of blew a gasket one day in that process. But I also did something at the same time, that I made a choice in my life. And when I made that choice and took action to do that thing that I was afraid to do, that opened up the doors, and it opened up my heart. Mm-hmm. And something just activated within me, but I had to do that thing for it to activate. And I didn't know that until I went through it.
And what's it been like being immersed in the music industry as a sober person? Was that more difficult early on? I mean, did you encounter situations in which, you pick up a gig and like everyone else in the band is high as shit and there's like tons of drugs around? Was that an issue at any point that you had to learn how to navigate?
Not really, because I always had an understanding that, I had no issue with anybody else drinking, around the dinner table, or other people drinking wine, or people, doing their thing, or even if they wanted to do drugs. It's like, that's not my issue. My issue was me and drugs and alcohol. But, other people don't have that issue, Some do. But I didn't mind that people would drink around me. Like it didn't affect me at all. And in music, I would go to clubs and be around people that drank all the time. I mean, I might not want to have long conversations with people that are sort of, like spraying me with saliva when they're drunk, or, talking gibberish or slurring. It's like, that's not that interesting for that long. But other than that, it's like I didn't judge them for whatever they're going through, and whatever, they have their own soul contracts here that they have to.
Did you ever feel any sense of like insecurity or not coolness?
No, not at all.
Were you open about the fact that you're sober with people you're playing
Yeah.
with and touring with?
Yeah, I
and
liked
stuff?
it. I liked it because it was different,
It's punk rock.
Well, it's like I play guitar left-handed upside down. Everything I do is nonlinear.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I do is different. The way I play guitar with Eric playing is on the backside of what he does. It's upside down and backwards from what he plays. So that's why we fit like, a puzzle. It's like we fit perfectly because I do all the stuff around what he's doing. So he plays his bits, and then I do all the stuff around him, just weaving around what he's doing. And I've always sort of been that way in everything in my life. Like I've been a foil to whatever. I've always been a counter, which, comes into like, what is it? The human design, which is a generator. So if I'm with a manifester, I can take what a manifester gives if they have an idea, and I can take that, and then I can generate so much energy around that and just pass it back.
I'm trying to remember what my human design thing is. I think it's a manifesting generator.
Oh, sure, buddy. You got it all.
I did it.
You're the best of the best.
I did a show on it, and she read my chart. I think that's what it was, but I haven't followed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I haven't followed it enough.
Yeah.
So at what point, because you and I share something that is pretty unique in my experience, and that is feeling called to work with psychedelics while at the same time being firmly committed to sobriety, something I've been writing a lot about in my book. It ended up being a pretty large portion of the book just because it's been so, I don't know, liberating and illuminating for me, but it's also something that is super risky, for people in recovery. So it's like I talk about it, but at the same time, I'm like, just because it's worked for me, I really don't recommend it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know how that's going to turn out for someone else. I think in my case, I was so deeply committed to my sobriety from day one, that by the time I started working with plant medicines and stuff, I was 20 years sober, and like this, I wasn't interested in going out, right? Or like relapsing. Like, no, I sat with ayahuasca the first time. I was like 10 times more committed to my sobriety after that, So it really is, it's kind of a real dichotomy, and one that I think a lot of people don't understand from the outside, because it's like, wait, you call yourself sober, but you're doing mushrooms. It's like, how did you reconcile that, and what was going on in your life where you felt there might be something there for you in terms of healing or expansion of your spiritual practice or whatever it was?
Well, I think it was, what was it? What's the guy's name? Michael
Michael Pollan.
The guy who wrote about microdosing. And so I read that book, and it fascinated me just on the level of what it does even as a microdose, and how it hooks up all the neurotransmitters and neuropathways and reconnects things that aren't connected. And with, the type of drug use and alcohol that I used, I was like, well, there's got to be some stuff that's not hooked up there. So reconnecting all that stuff within my system, felt like a good idea. And so I was on the road, and I started microdosing mushrooms, but it was imperceivable. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell at all if I had taken it or not, but I just knew it was doing something in my system. And I started to feel different. And also, now looking back, I think that just on a microdose level, the mushrooms, which hold all the information of the earth, right? It holds all this information, it holds God wisdom in it, or whatever you want to call it. But that earth wisdom, the wisdom that the ancestors knew about, the going all the way back, like it holds all the information of what things that we've lost as a Western civilization, that we've lost touch with, right? So we've lost touch with our spirit to source and to be here on earth at the same time, and what it means to be on earth. What does it mean to be connected to a tree? Like, do people have those relationships with energy that's coming from a tree or a cactus or a wolf or a bird or whatever it is? And so I think that when I started microdosing mushrooms, it was giving me information and sort of guiding me on what I needed to get to within this human body system, and how I really needed to ground here on earth and have a connection to this life and this body and other people and other animals and other rocks, like whatever it was. So I think that the mushrooms, they're very funny. They have a very cosmic sense of humor. And I think that it was informing me to do a more deep dive using, a therapeutic ceremony dose of mushrooms. And so, I looked around at different ways of exploring that. And, I was thinking about ayahuasca, and other types of plant medicine or animal medicine. And then it was suggested to me to work with someone that was, doing really beautiful ceremonies. I remember I'd been microdosing for about a year on the road. And when I got back, I was like, okay, I feel like I want to do that type of ceremony. And I'd been reading about it. I'd been hearing about it from a lot of beings that were coming into my field. I mean, even you, like that just happened, like out of nowhere. We were connected, and we had,
because when you met, I think I had already.
You were there.
Yeah, I'd done 2 ayahuasca retreats, I think, at that point.
Yeah. But I said, we had hooked up. You had commented on like a post or something, or I had commented on one of your things, and you were like, "Hey, man, I remember you from blah blah blah," and then we started talking, and then we had all these connections, like, oh, I went to the same school as you did in Santa Rosa, and I did drugs just like, we had like the exact same mirrored life along the way. So then, I went in, and when I did that first ceremony, when I went in, it was really wild to me, because I was not interested in losing my sobriety at all. Like anything to cloud my presence, I had no interest of any of that. Like I wanted to be more clear. I wanted to be more present. I wanted to be more connected. I wanted to understand how addiction works in my body, how the codependency works in my body, how, all these spiritual, emotional, ancestral things work. And I knew that I hadn't gotten to the deepest parts of that within me. And so when I did that first ceremony on mushrooms, it opened me up into where it was like, I was like, oh, I understand these realms. Like these are the realms that my spirit exists in. All this third dimensional stuff and the density here, that's the part I don't get. But I understand this. So every time I went in, I would do ceremonies. I was like, oh, I'm free. Like, oh, I get it. And I could see all the things. Like, I mean, I had things that happened in my childhood, in that first ceremony that I did, that popped up. And it was basically like I said to the shaman, I was like, this is like swallowing like Carl Jung. Like I just swallowed Carl Jung, and now I have Jung in my, like I have access to those parts of myself that he was talking about. And now I get to explore them, and I get to do the surgery and spiritual surgery on myself to correct certain things. So, I started exploring that, and then I started, helping the shaman facilitate and do bigger, facilitations for group, like large groups. And then I just became like, I remembered myself as a medicine man, like from whenever. And so it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember this. I know how to do this, you know? And then, you know, the plant medicine and animal medicines really opened me up, and that's where I got all of my practice on all the spiritual processes that I go through now, and all the healings that I facilitate. Like, I got all my chops with medicine, but at some point I had to, you know, specifically drop the medicine in order for me to actually ascend into the next level of how to do this without the medicine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the work we did today, Allison doesn't know that much about your protocol.
Yeah.
So, I'm so excited. Tomorrow I'm going to do a session with Doyle. And she's like, are you guys doing medicine? I'm like, no, dude. Doyle doesn't fuck with medicine. He's on some other level shit, you know, which is funny because she's always said since I've known her, like, you don't need psychedelics to go to those places. There's just one way you can get there, but she's been doing it on the natch for a very long time, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I think that's, you know, I think that's true for a lot of people. I think with me, it helped me on the fast track to get here to where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, I ended up like, you know, with my face planting on the edge of the universe because I did so many plant medicine ceremonies that I just hit the edge of the universe because I wanted to see it all, right? I wanted the biggest peek behind the veil and go, what is at the core of the universe? I want to know everything. But when I asked for that on the medicine, it was like, okay, you want to see everything? It includes the lower worlds too, the underworld. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like take into account that I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't want to see that part. Like, I don't want to. So I sort of got my ass handed to me. And it was all perfect because when I got my ass handed to me through the medicine, what I did for the next 8 months after that was I took myself out of society. I took myself out of basically everything. I didn't read books. I didn't watch TV. I didn't look at clocks because they were screaming at me. I couldn't take any stimulation of any senses. And so I basically put myself in a version of like a dark room for 8 months and ate a lot of food, grounded, went hiking every day for, 4 or 5, 6 hours a day. I would hike, then I would eat, then I would hike, then I started working out, and then I wanted to bulk up. I wanted to get grounded here. And then after 8 months, it was like I was sitting in a house and I was like, oh, I'm so scared to like go outside because I just couldn't take any outside sensory stuff. And then finally it was like I was sort of running out of cash. I'm like, okay, I can't sit in a room for 8 months. Like, I have to do something. Like, I have children. I have like all these things I have to do, insurance. And so finally I got a call from Eric and he said, hey, we're going to do a tour. And that was coming out of COVID. So it was the first time anybody was touring in the US after COVID. They were starting to open up venues again. And so he said, will you come out with me to do the tour? And I was like, yep, okay, I'm ready. And I remember I got on the flight, left the room in the house that I was in for that 8 months, and I got on a flight. And I remember when I landed, I could feel like a cellular shift. And I walked into rehearsal and saw Eric and all the band and all the crew members that were a part of that. And I remember I just blasted open, my heart chakra blasted open. And it was like I felt like, the whole term love, it's like I was this loving consciousness that just transmitted love to everyone around me. And by doing that, it was like that thing of what I'm putting into it is what I'm getting back, even much more than I would ever get if I just sat with nothing, right? Like I went up to everybody in the crew, every band member, and had the most meaningful conversations with all of them. And it was the first time I connected with some of the crew members that I had been seeing for years and years, but I'd never actually like had a conversation with him. And I remember how, deep that connection felt with, 40 people that I had talked to over that first day of reconnecting with everyone. And at that point, something just shifted in me, and I knew something had changed within me. And then after that tour, we went on the tour, and it was just like everything was super flowful. It felt like, 3-day tour, and it was 3 weeks, and it was like done. And I was like, wow. And I remember getting off the tour, and after that, I had something booked with John to go up to his center, and so I went up to Dr. John and did like, I was supposed to do like 3 days with him of doing like some regenerative medicine stuff, and I ended up staying 2 weeks and doing like full on John protocols for 2 weeks, and I was so amplified by this, the stuff I was doing. And then at the very end of that, he was like, hey, there's this like person that does breath and does these sessions. And he said, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I thought you might do that before you go. I think it would resonate, because he's good at connecting people. And so I remember I booked a session with this person, went to see her. And when I sat down with her, we sat 6 feet apart. And I remember we just did the eye gazing thing that, we do in the first part of the session. And I remember it was like 10 seconds. And all of a sudden I saw I popped into the medicine space that I would do on all the ceremonies in 2021. And I was in that realm. I was like, how am I here in those dimensions? How am I accessing that with just sitting in front of you? Like I'm not doing anything. And so I went through her whole session, which was about 2.5 hours long. And it's, a version of this, different, but she also studied with the person that I studied with, my guru. And I was like, hey, where did you get this? Like, where did you learn how to do this? She said, oh, I studied with this guy out in LA for 17 years. And I was like, I got to get a hold of him. So anyway, I got a hold of him, booked a session, and walked in the door. And when I walked in his, session space, I remember he opened the door and he's like, I've been waiting for you. I was like, me? He goes, yeah. He's like, we're getting the band back together.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, and like full body chills, like, what do I not know here? What's going on? So anyway, I did my first session with him, and then I was like all in. I wanted to study with him, and we would just go in like a couple times a week. I would book sessions with him, and we would just go through the process. And then I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm facilitating. So just by doing that stuff with him, it's like I was getting all the information of how to facilitate this kind of thing without using the medicine. And I think that in this time in 3D world, and for Western society, it's like going through this process in 3 hours. So somebody can, have, 4 hours in the morning where they have time, and they'll go, hey, can we go in and do a session? And then they have to go to work after. Well, you can do this kind of medicine ceremony without the medicine, and then you can integrate in real time. So it's like how you're sitting here. It's like you wouldn't be able to do that if you had just done ayahuasca for 8 hours. Like you wouldn't be sitting in this chair doing
in the fetal position, soiling my shorts.
Right. So this is how we bring in doing this kind of like ancestral, releasing ancestral trauma, alchemizing anger, sadness, grief into the love and light to be able to transmit that, because it's very much like what the 12-step program is for, and what Bill Wilson was, doing with the 12-step program as a spiritual process was, a lot of people think that it's about them going to AA that makes them feel better. So it's like, well, I just have to go to my meetings because that makes me feel better. And I just listen to stories there about people and their thing. And then when I leave, I feel better. Well, that's a part of it. But what Bill was doing back then with the design of the 12-step program was, it's not about you. It's about you getting as right with yourself as quickly as possible so you can be of service to another being and help them, right? And I think that's the misconception about a lot of people get stuck in that thing of like, well, this is, AA is for me and for that. But it's actually for you to be of service to another being as soon as you can, right? So like when I went in and I started working with my sponsor, he said the same thing. He was like, this isn't about you. This is about you being of service to another being. He said, so I hadn't even gone through the steps with him. And as I was, going through being a sponsor, I hadn't gone through the steps. And I remember like I was on step 2 or something. And he said, okay, I think you're ready to start sponsoring now. And I said, what do you mean? I haven't even gone through the entire steps. I was just at step 2. And he goes, yeah. He's like, how much time do you have? And I said, I don't know, 22 years or something sober. And he goes, yeah, I think you have quite a bit more than somebody that's 3 days sober. I think you have a lot to share, and I think you can put it to use. And I said, and you offer them. I said, if they need help, you offer it to them. He said, I want you to go to beginner meetings and I want you to make up cards that have your name and phone number. That's it. Nothing else on it. Just a simple card, Doyle, only Doyle, and your number, and give it to every newcomer that comes up to you, or you hand it out and say that you'll sponsor them. And so I put it immediately on the second step. I was like, okay, but it's so cool because it's true. It's like, my daughter is going through the 12 steps and has a sponsor and going through it. And I relayed that information to her. And, when I said it, I said, you should start sponsoring people. She's like, well, I'm only on step blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but you have 8 more months than somebody that's just coming in at 3 days. I said, you have a lot more experience than they do. And you have information for them that you can, share that could really help them. And so I said, it's about being of service. So go be service, and she got it. She was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Seems like everyone's into liver cleanses right now. Juice fast, coffee enemas, all these different protocols and resets. It's a huge industry. And look, that's super important, and periodically many of those cleanses can be useful. But the truth is, your liver's job isn't seasonal. It works every damned day. It's how we survive environmental toxins, stress, and late nights. And even so-called clean food isn't what it used to be. I mean, I barely even trust organic food anymore. And God forbid you're drinking alcohol or taking pharmaceuticals. Well, all of that has to get processed and shuttled out of your body via the liver. So the daily liver support matters more than the occasional cleanse. That's why TUDCA from Level Up has earned its rightful place in my daily stack. TUDCA is a taurine-conjugated bile acid that supports liver health and bile flow, helping the system function the way it's meant to. I think of it as a daily maintenance for my liver, cleaning house on a cellular level. But what I like most about TUDCA is that it's supportive, not aggressive, so there's no detox drama or Herx reactions. Just cleaner digestion, less heaviness, and a lighter, clearer feeling overall. To get your liver on point, go to lukestory.com/levelup and use the code Luke15 to save 15%. Because the fact is, in today's toxic world, your liver is running damage control 24/7. So do a deep cleanse occasionally, but make sure you love your liver daily with TUDCA from Level Up Health. Again, that link is lukestory.com/LVLUP. The code is Luke15. I mean, when you've destroyed any semblance of self-worth, which is kind of what happens when you hit bottom in different ways for different people, but you don't have real high self-esteem when you walk into your first meeting or going to rehab, right? But that's something that occurred to me too pretty early on, is that say you've been sober a week and you come into contact with someone who's been sober for 12 hours, you're like Buddha to them. You know what I mean? There's such a marked shift between no days and any number of days.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the things that I think is so useful in terms of feeling like your life has some sort of meaning or purpose beyond just selfishness that most addicts live their whole life, right? I mean, I never thought about anyone. I mean, I was nice to people. I cared about people, but my survival mechanism was so ingrained and so primary, I really couldn't, there was no space to think about anyone else. And
Right.
that was one of the early gifts for me. It's like, oh, I can give someone a ride, and it's like life-changing for them. You know what I mean? Some kid, you pick them up from sober living, take them to a meeting, drive them back home, get them some food at Denny's. I mean, it's like this, you just change that person's life with very little effort, but it felt so good and still feels so good because for me, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever started to even have a concept of being of service to someone without any kind of ulterior motive.
Right.
Or, you know, there's nothing in it for me, quote, right? Other than I'll probably feel better if I do this.
Yeah.
You know, but you brought up a misconception around 12-step groups, and the one that you highlighted is definitely true. One that I've observed is that I think many people outside of and inside of programs, take AA, for example, think of it as, well, I go there to quit drinking, which is like the obvious kind of most blatant idea. But to me, it's not where you go to quit drinking, it's where you go to have a spiritual experience. And when you have a spiritual experience, which is of course ongoing, it's a process, not a one-time thing, the need to drink goes away. You know, it's like the first thing is the spiritual experience. That's what enables you to be sober.
Yeah.
I think for many years I missed that and was just like, oh, the reason I'm coming here is to stay sober.
Yeah.
You know? And I really had a very difficult time in early sobriety because I didn't really change. I was the same guy.
Right.
My life was a little more manageable, but not much.
Yeah.
But when I started to really dig into, you know, the spiritual purpose of it, then things started to really change. And I started to see like, oh, it's just drinking and using as a byproduct of not having any spiritual connection in your life, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you get the spiritual connection. It's like, why would I trade this that I'm starting to discover for something so fleeting and destructive and dark, you know?
Yeah. And that's all we're searching for when we do drugs and alcohol is we're searching for that connection to source. We're searching to be in bliss and get beyond the mind. It's like we're doing it. It's just not the path of the true thing that we're searching for, but we think we're getting there.
Counterfeit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's but it is what we're trying to get to. It's like when I was doing heroin, that was a spiritual experience for me. It was just a very hardcore, nasty way of getting there. And, you know, a lot of
side
consequences, side effects, consequences, and all that.
It's like the Carl Jung letters between he and Bill Wilson. There's one of them that's really beautiful where Carl Jung is describing how he tried to help this alcoholic, Roland Hazard. It's like in the, you know, really in the folklore of AA history. And eventually, Jung just gives up. He's just like, I can't help this guy. And he tells Bill Wilson that he tried to help this guy and it didn't work, and that he thinks the reason why is because alcoholics have a thirst for God, and they're trying to find God through spirits, right? Through the alcohol. And he told the guy, I've tried to help you. I can't help you. I think the only chance you have is some sort of spiritual experience, because the problem you have is not a cognitive issue. Like we can't talk about your problems until you stop drinking. He's like, you need to go somewhere and find some spiritual experience. And then he found the Oxford groups, kind of a precursor to AA. But I love that letter because it comes from such a, you know, an accredited source, right? I mean, Carl Jung, okay, what does he have to say about it? He's like, basically he said like psychiatry, psychology, we can't really help you alcoholics. You need to go join some group or find God somehow. Well, he just threw up his hands. It was like, I'm done. He literally says in the letter, he's like, I gave him everything and it still didn't work. He tried a couple times and the guy kept relapsing. Right. I love that story because
and I think that
points to what you're,
that's an interesting point, because also the sponsor that I had in LA told me one time, he was like, spirituality is not something that you get. It's not something that you access. He said, it's an action. So he said, that's the whole being of service thing. He said, so when you are of service, truly of service to another being and helping out, first of all, it's like a multifaceted thing. You're out of yourself, because who wants more self and self and self and self? A fractal self. Like, enough of the self. Like, it gets you out of self because you are now helping, right? So that is one of the great things about being of service, is you're no longer thinking about yourself 24 hours a day. You're actually, you can't, because you're helping another being. So it's gone, right? At least for that moment.
Right.
So the more you do that, the more you be of service, the more you're out of self. That loop.
Yeah. Going back to the psychedelics, and when you made a pivot out of that after that 8 or 10 months, whatever it was, self-imposed darkness retreat, I think there's real wisdom in that, and it reminds me of the Alan Watts quote. I'll paraphrase, but something to the effect of, in reference to using psychedelics for spiritual enlightenment and so on. He said, yeah, there comes a certain point where you get the message, you got to hang up the phone, and it's like that propensity that some people have to keep chasing those kind of experiences. I think it was really wise and admirable that you were like, okay, I got the message, I'm hanging up the phone, and I'm going to find a way to access these realms and this level of healing without that, which is, clearly, the experience we had today. I don't want to reduce it to something as trivial as tripping, but I was having, very, very heightened spiritual experience. Let's put it that way. Crying, laughing hysterically, body moving, shaking, Kundalini energy going. Those are the kind of things that I've had in my most profound medicine ceremonies, where I've walked out a different person and made changes in my life that were tangible as a result of those experiences, So I think it's so beautiful that, you're crafting and curating and pioneering a modality that allows people to have that experience, especially speaking to someone in sobriety who's like, I'm not taking freaking drugs, which I totally respect.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think, oh man, but you're going to miss out on like the depth of healing that's not only possible, but in many cases, unavailable. When I first sat with ayahuasca, dude, I had no idea. No concept of how traumatized I was as a child. I could think about it mentally. Yeah, that was kind of rough. And I guess everyone goes through that, and when I started going into those spaces, it was like, oh my God. The amount of abuse and trauma was insane. And I don't know how I could have ever found that and been able to be able to hold and understand the gravity of how much harm I experienced and how it impacted my life, So it's like, to see it in that kind of reality is one thing, but to be able to go in and actually start to get it out of your nervous system and move through it and transmute it. For me, I don't think there's any way I could have done that, just no matter how much I dug my heels into my program. I dug my heels in for 20 years, hardcore. I was so committed, dude. And, they reached a point, but then on the other side of that, it's like, well, were you going to keep like chasing those experiences forever? You have to find a way that is a sustainable practice that doesn't take you out of the game, like working with medicine often does,
Yeah.
And it's risky in a lot of ways. Like the shit you went through, it was like, I watched that happen and I was like, oh shit. Doyle went off grid, son. Like, I hope he's okay. It's like, you're the kind of guy that kind of, like I said earlier, gypsy musician. So, I know you roll in the world in a different way than many people who are sort of more present all the time, but that time you were like gone. I was like, where's Doyle? We don't know. He's in Vegas somewhere, locked in an apartment. We hope he's okay. But I'm so grateful that, you took that message and went, okay, I'm going to find a way to do this that doesn't have downside. So tell us more about, you know, what you do. I remember when you got your space in Miami, when you moved there with Elle McPherson, your childhood supermodel Sports Illustrated dream girl that's now yours. You have such a blessed life. Who's a lovely woman. I'm so happy for you and happy for her.
She did your podcast recently.
Yeah, she did. I mean, what an amazing freaking woman. But I remember you got your space down there, and you're like, I'm starting to see people here and there, and I'm developing, you know, my protocol and stuff. And then when we recently connected here, you're like, I'm seeing like multiple people a day or a week, and it's a whole thing. Yeah. Which I can see now, having experienced it in its current iteration. I mean, how powerful and beautiful it is. Yeah. So what's that looking like? You know, what are the things that you do with people? What kind of impact have you seen? And like, if anyone's in Miami, can they look you up and do a session? How does that work, like public facing wise?
Yeah, I mean, everything up to this point has been by word of mouth. And now it's getting to the point to where I'm going to, you know, have some information. So, you know, when somebody comes by, because there have been people, I've had clients come in and they do a session and then they send 8 people. Also, I've been working with families. So I worked with this woman who sent her sister, and then I worked with the husband of that woman, and then I worked with the mother. So it's like the whole family. And that is really a beautiful process, because when I work with families that do it around the same time, the things that they are clearing out of the lineage, like the ancestral stuff, it's clearing all of it from all of them.
Wow.
And so they're all clearing it out of their whole lineage. But when you have multiple people doing that in that lineage, it clears it like really fast. So I've been having such a beautiful time and in complete awe that, you know, I'm getting to work with families that want to do that. And so I think now it's like the clients I have are like 2 to 3 per day per week. So I usually, you know, keep the weekends without doing sessions, and then during the weekdays I'll do 2 to 3 a day, and they're all 3-hour sessions, so it's 6 to 9 hours a day that I'm doing that.
And you don't get gassed?
No, not at all.
Wow.
Because my channel opens up when I'm doing it, and it's not me that's actually doing it. So I'm an instrument of whatever is channeling through for that other person to be able to access their own self-healing process. So I'm guiding and spotting and you know, teaching certain things very simply, but it's really the person is doing the self-process. I'm just there to make sure that, you know, they stay in that flow with it and sort of like conduct it a bit.
It's like playing an instrument
exactly.
in a way, right? It's an ensemble. I mean, it's like I didn't open my eyes. I had an eye mask on, and I know you had your gongs, but there were so many points where I'm like, what is the sound? Where's that sound coming from? How is he doing that? I wanted to peek so bad, you know, but like the soundscape, and then, you know, you were sort of chanting and singing at different points, and then some body work, and then there was, you know, some breathing stuff that I've done a bit of that with you before. It's just, that's the sense I had in the experience. It was like, wow, this is like, it's a symphony, you know, there really is. It's such music. I mean, there's music is a big part of it, the experience, but the essence of it is very musical. You know, there's so many different tones and layers and levels, and and it's also very multi-sensory.
Yeah. And I think because I'm so I've come into this mastery of frequency and energy and sound. So how I'm using frequencies, it can be, you know, energy work, a lot through the hands, but it's all coming from the chakras. You know, I do Reiki, I do other energy work that's Reiki-esque, but not exactly Reiki. But I find that a lot of the stuff is channeled through for the specific spirit or the specific client or person that comes in, like it is channeled through that way exactly for them. So if that person goes back to another person and said, yeah, you know, they recommend it and they're like, well, what is it like? Well, it wouldn't matter if they told them what it was like anyway, because that's not going to look anything like their session, because it's always very specific to them. It's almost like, you know, an Ayurvedic, like energy, like I have all these different modalities that I can work with, and they're all little tools that I can use. Like, do I want to go through the gongs? Do I want to go through sound bowls? Do I want to go through body alignment? Do I want to go through the Reiki energy? Do I want to activate the chakras through another process? I can do through the breath. I can do other type of breath. Like, I'm actually learning on the fly how to facilitate new ways of that body that's like on the table. Like, it's all channeling through. So it's constantly evolving with each client, because everybody's different. You know, everybody's spectrum, light spectrum is different. Everybody's thumbprint is different. Everybody's genetic makeup, it's so different. So then what they're clearing is different from the other person that's clearing after them. So I'm just learning on the fly, and I'm really, I'm very sort of kung fu and samurai about following what's channeling through and opening up to it and not editing with my mind any part of it. So even like recently, like, you know, I would play the gongs and people would feel like they were on medicine or mushrooms just on the gongs. And they would be like, you know, way out in deep space and seeing deities and like all this stuff.
That was me, dude.
And they would be on this journey. And then all of a sudden, like, I started singing in this like other language. And I had never sang in like a language or a light language or an ancient language, whatever it is that's channeling through. But the pre-awakened me person would have never done that, because I would think, oh, this sounds stupid, or what are they going to think of me? Like, they're going to think I'm weird if I'm like speaking in this weird language that I don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. And now I don't hold back. Like, I just follow whatever comes through, I let come through. If there are words specifically coming through that I hear for them, I speak them without knowing. Like, I don't know. Doyle Bramhall doesn't know what these words are or what they mean, but I'm going to speak whatever it is that comes through, and I know it's specifically for you and that you're going to understand it. And usually it's the people, like, I'll say some words, like it'll just channel through really fast, and they'll say, how did you know that? How did you know that that was what the process I went through exactly? And I said, I don't.
Yeah, you're getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Funny, these things don't surprise me at all anymore, but I do like to acknowledge them just because they're beautiful. But for some reason, I was on the table, and when in the first portion of it that involved the sound, I was thinking about Etta James. I was just reflecting on, like how blessed I am to have seen so many incredible, just one in a million artists, and her being among them. That generation of blues singers and things like that. I was like, fucking Etta, I saw Etta James sing, man. I was right there for that one, And I went on dreaming about other stuff, and then we're done with that, and you're like, yeah, it's just like Etta James, Luke. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Then the end of the session, at last, you play a freaking Etta James song is on the playlist already. I'm just like, okay, come on, Those are those fun little clues we get, I think, that remind us, like, yeah, everything is really connected.
Yeah, and here. That would happen, like, when I first got together with Peter, my guru in LA. It was that thing. He was like, I step in the door and he's like, I've been waiting for you. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then we would do that thing. And then I would think of something. So he would do the breaths with me, and we'd go in, and I would like pull my head back, and a song would pop in my head of mine. This particular song popped into my head as I did, and the portal would open, and I would go in, and then I would like go into some kind of time warp, like of sound, where it's like where everything slowed down, and I was like all of a sudden I was in sound. I was like, had entered into sound. Like, and then I started to come back to this realm. And as I came back, the song that I was thinking of right before I did the breath was on. And it's so obscure. Like for him to know, I was like, you're playing, and he's like, don't speak. Like I didn't even have to say it.
Just let it happen.
Like, it's about experiencing it. And I was like, yeah, but I want to talk. He's like, no. You don't have to look up at the plane and go, ooh, there's a plane. Look at the plane outside. He's like, just listen to the sound. It's like, just be in the experience of it. You don't have to go, oh, plane. I need to describe it. You know? I was like, yeah, but you know what you just did is like, I just thought it and then you did it. And he's like, okay, calm down. And I was like,
he's like, this is,
but it was one of those moments with you, because I hadn't thought of Etta James in like years.
I'm not sitting around listening.
It just came out of my mouth to you.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. I love it.
And I love it. And that stuff happens all day long in the sessions, and I never question it, and I'm always surprised by it, and it's so beautiful. But they're like, how do you know that? I don't know that, but I know how to fully open up for spirit to move through to give you information.
Yeah. Tuned in, the radio station, The Field.
Yeah, and I'm a musician.
K-Field.
And I'm a musician, so it's like those are speaking my terms. It's like, let's tune up, let's plug in, let's turn up, and let's get turned on. You know, it's like,
turn off the distortion pedals, go clean.
Turn it up.
I'm going to ask you my final question and then make a request if you would indulge us with some little guitar playing. So I just personally love to watch and hear you play. But before that, let me know 3 teachers or teachings, could be a philosophy, a person, a book, a record, anything that have informed who you are, how you roll, what makes you Doyle.
I would say, as far as like, you know, spiritual teachers or mentors, I would say it started, well, it's 2-part. Donny Hathaway and Stevie Wonder. They're like one for music. Like, I feel like I learned everything about how music moves with Stevie Wonder. Musically, vocally, the sound, the way his spirit moves, is the way that the Kundalini moves in me. And the range of emotions that I could feel through music, I think I learned most from him.
Wow, that's interesting.
I would say that Yogananda was my entry because my mother, she was a part of the Self-Realization Fellowship, and she had all these books with about Yogananda, and also a lot of yoga books and stuff, but sort of obscure yoga books, like not ones you would find now of like, here's how to do the poses and, you know, heat up the room and all that stuff is like more physical. But this was like ancient yogic practices of like, here, put this goat strand up your nose and pull it all the way through, and then you floss your nasal passage, and wear a loincloth, and then do all these like crazy practices, right? So I remember I would just look through those when I was like 7 years old or 6 years old, and I would like always like look at her yoga books and Yogananda, and I would just stare into Yogananda's eyes. And those eyes, you know, on Autobiography of Yogi, like his eyes on that, like I felt like I was like getting pierced with this consciousness, with like something that was helping me remember myself as a spiritual being in this lifetime. And so I would say that it started with Yogananda was my first introduction into like, oh, spiritual being. There's something about this, you know, that I will be exploring.
Another parallel. I won't take the time to explain it, but it'll be a story for a later time. Same experience. with a different mystic, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really cool, yeah.
And I'll say that, you know, that Peter Evans is, for what I'm doing now in my life and the understanding that I have now of music, frequency, energy, chakra system, facilitations, breath, pretty much everything, with the understanding of like how it works in Qigong, Tao, the tarot, with the Kabbalah, Tree of Life, with the Vedic system, the Kundalini system, the Tantra system, like in Christianity, like all the different religions, like I understand of the big picture stuff of how everything works through his teachings.
Yeah, incredible guy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the first times I ever had a full-blown like visual hallucination without being on any medicine was with Peter. Tilt my head back, look at that mandala on the ceiling. I was like, who slipped DMT into my drink? What is happening?
I know. The first time I thought I had done Bufo, I was like, wait. When did I do Bufo?
Yeah.
And he was like, you didn't do anything. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Powerful.
Yeah, and you know, also the great thing, the thing that I find so fascinating is when I first saw him, it was like I walked into his space and we started doing breaths immediately. And I remember I was just laughing. I was laughing hysterically. And because I was going in on the breaths, it was like I was accessing other dimensions. So it was like my laughter was like reverberating into the universe. And I could hear this, wah, ha, ha, ha. And I was just laughing. And like the stuff that he would share with me as I was doing the breaths, and then I would come back and then he would share more gold and the way he was putting things. But it was all with humor. It was all with humor. It was with enthusiasm. It was with joy. It was with love. It just had everything to it. It was like, it was all so joyful. It's like, we're here to express our love and share that love and our light with everyone. Even, it's like if you think of Buddha and Jesus and all these avatars, it's like, you know, Buddha wasn't sitting at the tree going, you know, that person that's judging me right now for sitting at this tree, like meditating and being enlightened, like they don't like me. He was still allowed at the party. He doesn't have to drink from the light, or, you know, he doesn't have to drink anything, but he's allowed to be there. It's like the light keeps emanating the light. If the dark dissonant beings want to be there, they can be there. If they want to, you know, draw from it, they can, but they don't have to. But, you know, that being never judges the dissonant being for being in whatever part of their journey that they are in. If they can't see it, they're still like, you can drink anytime. I'm still going to share the love and the light, no matter what.
All right. So in closing, which I could have actually, to be honest, just had the whole podcast just to listen to you play guitar. I mean, I love your playing because it's so unique, but also anytime you pick up the guitar, something totally different and spontaneous comes out, you know, which makes it more interesting. Which is why I was like, hey, can you play this one song at the end of the show? I'm just like, just do something. It's going to be super cool and surprising to me. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you too. In addition to, it was a comment/question, in addition to Black Sabbath, which we don't share love for that particular band. You like Sabbath?
Yeah.
Oh, I had that wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Sabbath are kind of bluesy in a way.
No, I like that.
Okay. The one that shocked me was the Grateful Dead, which is a very polarizing band, but I remember asking at some point, I was like, well, you like Jerry, right? And you're like, yeah.
No, I like Jerry.
Oh, okay.
I just, like, I could listen to Jerry and I could listen to the songs. I couldn't get into the jam stuff with them. I was like, but I like their songs.
Got it. Fair enough.
And Jerry, like, I grew up in Santa Rosa, so I was a part of a lot of the bands up there that all were, you know, doing that.
Noted.
Stuff with him. And so I remember hearing when I was 15 or 16, there was some live performance of Jerry playing this solo. It was like a 20-minute solo, and it blew my mind, like what he was doing.
Well, we've clarified the record.
I just can't listen to, like, you know, this
drums in space for 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's like I'd rather listen to like John Coltrane or Joe Henderson or, you know,
Cool.
kind of thing.
Play us out, baby.
Okay, well, now that we're in Austin, Texas, you can only play blues in Austin, Texas.
I'm here for it. And that, my friends, is what we call a wrap. Thanks for hanging out on this week's episode of The Lifestylist. But before I sign off, I want to remind you about one of the best ways to support the show while also upgrading your life, my online master market. That's where I've curated a collection of my favorite lifestyle design products, world-class supplements, EMF protection gear, water purification, blue light solutions, biohacking tech, and tons more. And these aren't just random health products. I mean, you can find that on Amazon. I've tested and vetted every item on the site. So if you see it there, it's something I personally use and trust. So if you've ever wondered what brands I actually use day to day or where you can find the gear I'm always talking about, the Master Market is your one-stop resource. To check it out, head over to lukestory.com/store. You can browse around, pick up some upgrades, and know that every purchase helps this show keep trucking. And the best part is that nearly everything listed there comes with an exclusive discount just for Lifestylist listeners. So you get cutting-edge tools to optimize your mind, body, and spirit and save some dough in the process. Again, that link is lukestory.com/store. Get in there and dig around and stock up on the best of the best. And you can click that link right in this episode description. Oh, and don't miss the search bar while you're there. That's how you can quickly find exactly what you're looking for without getting lost. All right, that's it. Until next time, be well and share this episode with someone you love. Hell, share it with someone you're struggling to love because everyone deserves it.